I'm now a professor of a discipline that didn't exist when I went to college. The year I graduated was the year Limits to Growth came out. And that was the first use in the English language of the word sustainability. And now we have whole schools of it. Arizona State will give you a PhD in it. We'll give you an MBA in it. This is an attempt to do a systems map of the field of business and sustainability. Don't bother to try to read it. Just understand that it's like that map of the Afghan systems flow. It's complicated. And I would argue no university yet has a handle on it. A group of us came together about a month ago to create a new organization called the Madrone Project. Gifford and Libba Pinchot from Bainbridge, Greg Miller, who was the managing director at Google.org, Jay Ogilvy, who was, as Greg was, dean at Presidio, myself, a man named Eric Burlow, whose systems map I showed you before, a couple other folk, to try to take the best content from this whole field and make it universally available to the world using technology, using web-based learning. Think TED Talks on steroids. Think a group of you, wherever you happen to be, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, download this content, sit together, have a conversation about it, learn from it, and then post to the blog about what it is you've learned. Add content so the rest of us can learn from your learning. Real education. Not the sort of rote stuff that goes on in a classroom where you memorize and there's a right answer. We all know there aren't right answers in this field. We're making it up as we go along. So watch this space, the Madrone Project. This is work by a colleague at California College of the Arts, which has just created a degree in sustainable design of how all of these bits fit together. See, at the heart of it, systems thinking. All of us who teach this require Dana's book in our classes. And in fact, when Diana first found Dana's manuscript, you guys know this story?
No, go ahead.
Dana had written Thinking in Systems, sent it to a publisher who said, who would want to read this? Dana went, oh, and put it in a drawer. And when Diana was going through her stuff, found it, and sent it to me and said, the publisher said no one would ever want to read this. What do you think? And I said, holy shit. Can I assign it to my students? Diana said, I'm thinking of having it published. I said, we'll edit it. We'll give you comments. And so for 2 semesters, my students read the unpublished manuscript, and their class assignment was, how would you improve this book? We sent all the comments off to Diana, and it's now a book.
And everybody loves it.
And everybody loves it.
Responses of this is very important.
This is arguably, if you read only one book, this is the book. You know, don't read Limits to Growth. It's, 30 years old. Do read the executive summary to Beyond the Limits. That's also very important. We've learned to walk on the moon, though even on the moon we needed a car. Well, it was a solar-powered car. We have not yet learned to walk on Earth. We need leadership. I rather like this line from Lord of the Rings, where Gandalf said, the rule of no realm is mine, but all worthy things that are in peril as the world now stands, those are my care. And for my part I shall not wholly fail if anything passes through this night that can still grow fair and bear fruit and flower again in the days to come. For I too am a steward, did you not know? It's not a bad maxim of leadership. It doesn't matter if you're an elected official or the CEO of a company. And remember, in the story it was these two, the fun-loving, unassuming little hobbits, who took on their shoulders this awesome task. And they were scared and they didn't know where they were going. But in the end, all the kings and warriors and wizards could just stand by as the little people saved the world. I think real leadership is extraordinary courage by ordinary people. Dana wrote this shortly before, well, the better part of a decade working in Afghanistan, which, when I first started going there, essentially had no constitution. The Constitution was written when I first started going over there, and has essentially no legal structure, very sketchy sense of land ownership, who owns what, and no physical infrastructure outside of Kabul and very little inside, capital city, open sewers. And they are going to do everything from scratch. And what I was trying to do was convince them, you have a world-class opportunity. You are going to build these systems. Do it right. Take world best practice in how do you meet basic human needs with the sustainability technologies. And to the extent that you are building anything, a mental infrastructure, a physical infrastructure, a legal infrastructure, take the best from around the world and do it right. And I've largely failed. I'm not good enough. The problem's big. I made a choice midway that I could keep going to Afghanistan and crash Natural Capitalism, my new organization, or I could stay home and grow that and get it to the point where it had the stability. Corruption, which is rampant in my country and in yours and in Afghanistan and the world around. There are a whole lot of very big reasons why these problems exist. And I mentioned I'm working now with a man who is the managing director at Google.org. He was the number one person hired. Larry and Sergey, the founders of Google, hired Larry Brilliant to create Google.org. Larry called Greg and said, want to come change the world? Imagine that phone call. You were essentially handed all the money in the world. Want to change the world? What do you do? 4 years later, they had failed. And Larry and Sergey more or less pulled the foundation back inside. Well, we're going to do things the Google way. Now, they did a lot of good work, and the Google Foundation goes on and it does a lot of good work, but I have these conversations with Greg. How could you fail? You had all the resources. How could you fail? Well, the easy answer is changing the world is a daunting task. But the less facile answer is we all in this community have to get a great deal smarter about how do we use resources. Where are the leverage points? Bucky talked about trim tabs. You know what a trim tab is? On a very big boat, there will be a rudder. And to change direction of a very big boat, you have to change direction of the rudder. But the pressure of the water against the rudder makes it impossible to move the rudder until you break that pressure. You break that pressure with a tiny little device inside the rudder called a trim tab, which moves and creates turbulence, and that breaks the pressure that enables you to turn the rudder, that enables you to turn the whole boat. Where are the trim tabs? And again, this is this concept of Eric Berlow's, of these very complicated systems. I mean, where do you start? If you can understand, if you can get clarity in your own mind about, of all of these bits, we're going to focus on that one. If we're going to focus on that one, then what are the nodes that come off of that? And what are the nodes that really matter? Which of all these nodes are not actionable? You can't do anything about them. Which of them are military, outside your control? Which of them can you do something about? Now focus on those. Again, it's the systems understanding. And those, what nodes those are, change over time. What you can do something about changes over time. Gandhi had a concept of a teachable moment. These moments, this is a black swan, these moments happen unpredictably. And when they happen, if you see them, ooh, swan, and rigorously exploit them, you can make a huge difference in a very short period of time where for the prior decade, nothing's happening. Now, I don't want to say I've done nothing in Afghanistan. There are windmills all over the Panjshir Valley. The energy minister for a while was taking my advice. The military in Afghanistan, you may have seen the piece in the New York Times a month or so back, the military has started realizing that if they are going to have any impact on delivering real value to the villages, they're going to have to do it by bringing in renewable energy. Oh, those tankers of diesel that come over the Khyber Pass and get blown up. When I was working there, I hand-carried into the country books on how do you make biodiesel. If we are bulldozing the fields of the farmers growing poppy, why don't we pay them to grow oil crops as feedstocks for biodiesel, which we then buy from them, manufacture locally, and when we leave, there is a biodiesel infrastructure there. The military in the last month or so has started to do that. It's like, maybe I did have an impact. 5 years later, and when I stopped going to Afghanistan, it's like, you know what? I'm pushing a rope. I'm getting nowhere. And I'm going to crash my own organization if I keep doing this. So you have to make these trade-offs. But my conversations with Greg Miller, the conversation still is, how do we change the world? And every time I get stuck in the weeds, well, but where's the money going to come from? Whose job is that? He says, no, our job is to change the world. It's like you have to pull out to the complexity, to the whole, to understanding. This is what it's all about. Our job is to change the world. And in part, I think it's partnerships. When Greg started working at Presidio, he and I ran into a brick wall. Both of us were about to get fired. That seems to be something I do rather well. And we looked at each other and said, is it worth it? And he said, yes, because we are going to teach together. And we are teaching together in part because of the students, but more because we are going to find a way to change the world together. And we need the time, and we need the space, we need the project to be working on. And what, now 4 months later, Madrone has come up. Is Madrone going to change the world? I don't know, but we're going to give it a go. So who are your partners? The individuals with whom you work well. I think the greatest gift in life is a partner. I've had, maybe this is my 5th, and there is a taste. When you find a partner, you know it. And is it a partner for all times? No, probably not. Dana and Dennis. You go your separate ways. But when you find that person and you have that moment, dance.